I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
What is Michael? What do you have a favorite terpene like yourself? Do you one that you prefer, or is it situational?
No, it's not situational as much as it is. I like combinations. So, like the plant very rarely produces terpinolene and limonene together, but boy, I love them together. So the blends that I make that have both of those together, it just makes life more enjoyable. It's really great.
Yeah. No, that's it all depends on the situation for me. Obviously, I guess I could think that's the case for a lot of people, but I like the terpinolene and Jack Herer effect. But it's really interesting because I get that crash. You're right about that. It's you mentioned that a second ago, so that was interesting.
Yeah. So I think I've learned how to fix the crash, but I'm not going to tell you how I'm doing.
I was just gonna ask you. Come on.
Yeah, that's my Jack Herer is my favorite. So.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
I was just gonna ask.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. You have to learn that on the court. I'm not gonna teach you.
I will say this. One of the things I wanted to ask you though, I thought was kind of interesting. It's related to that too, and my take on it, like cannabis hangovers, right? Like, I think it's a thing for sure. Nothing like an alcoholic hangover, in my opinion. But my take typically to just reduce that, and I get that question a lot. Like, I don't want to smoke because it gives me a hangover. Typically, I'll say, well, are you adding any CBD to your mix? And that, in my opinion, has always been something that's reduced the hangover. I just am curious what your thoughts may be for our listeners, because we've had some of those questions
using it
as well.
at the same time, THC and CBD together, it works to some degree like a seatbelt against some of the effects of THC. Some of the effects we don't really like about THC. But also, I mean, because it's kind of competitive to some degree, even though it's probably binding, the CBD is binding to a different site on the CB1 receptor, that's the current thinking, than THC. What happens is that CBD changes the shape of the receptor and therefore the response and the outcome of THC binding to the receptor. My favorite way to do it basically is I separate my CBD use from my THC use. And what I do is I take CBD in the morning. If I'm going to take it more than that, I'll take it morning and early afternoon, but I won't take it after early afternoon. And the reason is that there's some evidence that CBD potentially interferes with how our circadian genes work, our body clock works, and that a lot of people say, oh, I take CBD for sleep. You're actually not taking it to sleep. You're taking it to reduce your anxiety so you can sleep. Okay. CBD is good at tamping down anxiety, but the research is that CBD is mildly wake promoting, so that it kind of increases you to be awake. Now that's different than be stimulated like caffeine. But the reason I use CBD and during the day is that I don't get as sleepy. I don't want to take a nap as much, and it seems to protect me from a lot of THC side effects. But again, I'm also taking very small doses of CBD, relatively speaking. And the question is, what are the doses of CBD?
Right. I was just gonna ask you.
Yeah. So, and the answer to that is they're probably taking too little, but they don't really need for most people to take more. Okay. So, effectively, even a 20 milligram dose of CBD may turn out to be effectively a microdose of CBD, because almost all the clinical studies of CBD these days are being conducted at huge doses, like 600 milligrams. I mean, 600 milligrams, that's an expensive CBD dose. I mean, there are a lot of whole bottles of CBD tincture out there that don't contain 600 milligrams. And you're not going to drink a $50 bottle of CBD to get a clinically effective dose. But these microdoses seem to move the needle for a lot of people, seem to reduce anxiety, seem to reduce THC side effects. So I think it's a really useful compound. But I don't always like it at the same time as THC, because it has a tendency to make the euphoria fuzzier. And I like the kind of sharp, pointy side to THC, provided that I've balanced it with terpenes. I use terpenes I use all these things to modify the effect of one another. It's like trying to, it's like inviting cage fighters to dinner.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you've got the right balance.
Yeah.
So nobody throws the gravy at somebody.
That's good. And so I think I get what you're saying there, because it seems like when I think about it, like when I take CBD and THC together, and I do all kinds of, you know, like little side projects on the weekend, figuring out what combinations I like or not like. And yeah, I find that when, you know, obviously when you use CBD and THC together, that experience is of the THC euphoria and the better parts of what you like of the THC is dulled a tad, right? And that maybe, and you're right. Like if I am trying to focus, and if I, you know, utilize Jack Herer, then if I have a lot of CBD in the mix, I'm not going to get that sharp focus for that intense, like quick amount of time as I typically would, I find, if I combine it with CBD. I never thought about it that way though. That's really interesting, but it's true for sure, the way that works.
I mean, all this stuff is a cage match in your brain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a symphony that sounds good. And that's why I kind of left. I mean, I love cannabis cultivation, but I'm not a cultivator. But I admire the art so much.
Yeah.
And now my admiration for extractors has gone way up, because I've spent time now deep into extraction and what can be extracted and what can't be, and how to protect it. I mean, that's my business these days. My business is to find what I like in cannabis and figure out a way to protect it long enough to get it inside of me or my customers. And that's the game. Awesome. And so few people are focused on that. I mean, you walk into most dispensaries and it's like, you like indica?
Yeah.
And the truth is, you know, I was on this podcast with Cami Kamolan and Frenchie Canola. And you know, what I said then was, indica and sativa is like trying to judge the taste of a nut from the shape of the tree. And it's the stupidest thing ever.
I know.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Like there's some sativas out there that actually make me a little relaxed, and there's indicas that give me a little pep. You know what I mean?
In other words, they're going by the shape of the leaf. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Right.
That isn't science. That's fortune telling. Okay?
Yes.
That's like looking at tea leaves in the bottom of your cup going, you're going to be a banker. I mean, it's just it's nonsense. It's like looking at the leaves of the cannabis plant saying, you will be euphoric and energetic. And I mean, the truth is, given the education that a lot of dispensaries provide to their staff, should we be surprised? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, you know, there are what's great is a lot of people who work at dispensaries shoulder the burden of really trying to figure out how cannabis is working. Now, the downside to that is they have often access, frankly, to too much cannabis. So then their lens is that of a very heavy user. And unfortunately, that can do a disservice to people who don't use as much or don't have access to as much. All right, because that person won't be giving always the best advice.
Right. Yeah, and I find when I go to, sometimes I'm shocked actually. I've gone to a few dispensaries and find that like they just don't know what the information they're providing to the consumers, and I can't believe that sometimes the education isn't there, because this is something that I find that if you don't give a consumer the right dose, or if you dose them the wrong way, they may have a bad experience and never come back to cannabis, and that's why people don't do it.
Yeah, I was at a dispensary in Venice one time, California, and you know, this nice, sweet old lady comes up to the counter, and the staff member goes, "Oh, you want to try oral cannabis? Okay, well, now this is a 60 milligram cookie. Okay, so just go home and take it. Okay," and I'm thinking to myself, is it going to give somebody who's never used cannabis a 60 milligram cookie? Wow. She's going to be painting her house with mustard from the refrigerator. Okay, if she's not quaking underneath the dining room table, concerned that aliens are trying to steal her brain. Okay.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I've seen some of these recommendations that are good, and I feel like you don't want to step in, right? Because like you're right, some of the recommendations they get are just bogus. The things that you're hearing, but it's important that I think we eventually get people who are actually educated, like very educated in those positions, and not because cannabis is dangerous, like and it's gonna kill you, but it'll exactly what you said. Put you in a situation that's very uncomfortable and possibly make you make decisions that aren't going to be beneficial.
It's tricky because I don't expect the staff at the grocery store to tell me how to make a hollandaise sauce.
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah.
Okay. And I don't even expect the people at the wine store to know every single aspect of the wine. They may know a lot about wine and a lot more than the average cannabis dispensary staff member knows about the cannabis. To some degree, I don't know. But what I do know is it's the responsibility of the people who are making the product that's sold in these dispensaries to tell the consumer how it works. It's really on them. And if if the company who's making your products can't tell you that, find another company.
Yeah.
Okay, because the truth is they may also not know some things that could impact your health. Like it's a bad idea to have 18% terpenes in something you're going to inhale.
Yeah, I haven't heard that recommendation in a dispensary yet.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, for sure. No, it's really important for sure. And I guess you were talking about some other things kind of on topic, just with cannabinoids. And one I've been hearing a lot of, and I'm just curious to kind of get your input on it, is CBG. And that one is just, it kind of seems like it's budding, like kind of like CBD did a little bit as far as popularity goes. And I'm learning a little bit. I don't know too much about it, but I was just curious if maybe just on your side of, I'm sure if you can kind of give some insight.
It's a decent analgesic, and and not it's considered a non-psychoactive cannabinoid. What that actually should be described as a non-intoxicating cannabinoid, because it's psychoactive. So is CBD. It's just non-intoxicating. And the fact is, the evidence right now is that apparently in some people, CBD may be more intoxicating than we thought.
Really?
Another topic for another time.
Yeah, but, right, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, for CBG, yeah, it's interesting. The truth is, a lot of people have exposure to CBG because they had skunk varieties of cannabis, and it's the skunk varieties of cannabis that are often high, or reasonably high, in CBG. So things like green crack, which is basically skunk number one. According to, I was part of a group that sat down with David Watson, the guy who brought skunk number one to Holland, Sam the Skunk Man, and we laid out 25 different kinds of cannabis in front of him and said to him, which one of these is closest to skunk number one? Because he'd know. And so he sniffed and looked at all of them and then just pulled out the green crack and said, that is skunk number one.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah.
Amazing. That's cool. No, it's that's interesting. That's it's definitely something I've been getting some questions on too, so it's interesting to hear that.
But yeah, so that has CBG in it. So
yeah.
You want a CBG effect?
Yeah, green crack is one of my favorites. If I can get a hold of that, ever. But that's just got a great, it has a lot of myrcene in it. I think it's great, energetic effects though.
And awesome. And so it's one of the few varieties that you run into that has significant amount of the terpene osmine. And
osmine.
And so it's osmine and myrcene together that make the little skunk number one party. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Cool.
No, that's for sure a fun one. And Michael, I wanted to this is a show about misconceptions, and cannabis and all that good stuff. And we know that there's a few misconceptions on cannabis, not too many, but but I wanted to get your input on what your take would be possibly on like the biggest misconception that you typically come across when you're talking to people, and what like your vision, like what you would like to see and what you think may be happening in the next like 10, 20 years with cannabis. I'm just curious. Just so my last few questions on the show.
Yeah, sure. So the biggest misconception is one we've already covered to some degree, which is CBD is good for sleep. I mean, that was super common. Yeah, it's good for sleep until it's not. So what will happen is, you know, when your anxiety gets handled, all of a sudden CBD has you staring at the ceiling at 2 o'clock in the morning. All right. I've had that experience. Right. Many people have had that experience. And so understanding that CBD is really kind of a daytime experience for most people is dispels one of the biggest misconceptions.
Got it.
Other misconceptions. Well, indica sativa, obviously. I mean, that one just ridiculous. And then, I mean, the biggest misconception in cannabis, period, by far, is potency equals effect. Okay, so everybody goes in. Remember, see, most places label, if they label their cannabis, they label it by its THC content. So you walk in and consumers tend towards the highest THC products. The problem with that is that there's the misconception that THC equals effect, when in fact, I can take a 30% THC variety, which typically don't produce much in the way of terpenes, because Rafi Mechoulam, the guy who discovered THC, he talks about the stinginess of the plant, meaning that the plant, when its genes have been manipulated through breeding to produce high THC, loses the ability to produce high amounts of terpenes. So it's a trade-off. Because again, the plant is limited. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, because these are biosynthetic pathways, and the thing is, if you put all of the energy resources towards THC, you have fewer for terpenes. So, the biggest misconception, what people should be looking for, is high terpene, reasonable THC content, because that's going to provide the richest experience. All right? THC by itself is like a bass solo. Okay?
Yeah.
You don't want to really, like, you know, the bass solo starts at the concert. I head out for a beer. Okay. I mean, you know,
right.
And so the thing is that richer entourages is what we should be looking for, and we should demand that stores prove it. Like, okay, you're saying that this has high terpene content. Let me see the certificate. Let me see the lab result.
The COA, right? I've noticed, it's funny you say that. I've noticed that when I go to a dispensary and there's 80, 70, 80, 90% THC, I've gotten the 90% concentrates, and I also get the 70% as well. And I find that, and I actually, Jack, I think I mentioned this to you actually, that because I think it was lower cannabinoids and higher terpene content in that lower THC percentage, when I actually did feel like I had better effects from that cart.
Yeah, there's no question.
Because of that. And that's actually, you
want a symphony. You don't want a solo instrument, okay? And the thing is that what I'm finding is the more complex the symphony and the more distinguishable it is from another product's symphony, it's the difference between Mozart and Beethoven, you know, or Mozart and Tchaikovsky. I mean, it's a different experience. And I want differentiation in my cannabis experience that comes from rich entourages, not from somebody who can just prove they can grow, you know, a 34% THCA plant. That's kind of boring.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's funny. I think it's almost like when people start drinking, you know, in college, you're like beer and wine and shots and everything. And when you start with cannabis, I think a lot of people go that route. THC, that's what I want. And it's not even they start there. And a lot of times I feel like a lot of my friends have been using cannabis for years, just started there and ended there, and they never really educated. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, but I mean, there are probably people out there who continue like doing Jaeger shots into their 50s.
Yeah. Right.
All I can say is good for them.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah.
Right.
Good for them. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, just
Well,
chasing the THC tail is kind of silly. It just shows an incomplete understanding that we need to fix about how cannabis works. And once we've educated people, they'll start to appreciate that there's a lot more nuance and a lot more consistent outcome available. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and do you see us? I mean, the Farm Bill passed, and the next few years here. I mean, that the CBD has been all the craze for the last year. I mean, what do you like? Are you seeing politically? Like, are you seeing this starting to open up in the next 5-10 years, or do you still think we have a ways to go?
Well, I mean, we have a ways to go, but the cow's out of the barn. Okay, and
Yeah.
it ain't going back. I mean, unless we go full. I mean, unless the government gets really scary, which we're kind of at a tipping point for scary government. And so scary governments can do scary things now, but except all of this technology, all of this knowledge, everything that's come with the liberalization of cannabis laws, it could disappear right back into the underground. Okay, I mean, high taxes can force a lot of very, very technologically savvy people to just do it outside of the commercial system. Okay, I mean, that's where psychedelics have existed for years. And so, I mean, and there's a lot of really hardcore chemistry in that community. But I'm just concerned that if we overly regulate, then we'll end up driving a lot of talent who'd make safer products in the long run to the underground, where they don't have access to quality control mechanisms to make sure those are safe products. And so I think it's really important that we vote for people who are going to have sane cannabis policies. And I'm concerned about, Joe Biden right now, because he's never been a fan of the plant, So we've moved him a little bit.
You're right. You're right about that.
It's my concern too.
Yeah. I mean, the best of two evils, I guess, what we're looking at as far as that's concerned.
I got a simple solution. Simple solution. Dave Chappelle for president. It's like Dave Chappelle. I mean, I watched Dave Chappelle's special that dropped today.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
You got to see it.
There would be a lot less stress in the country, I feel like, maybe if Dave Chappelle was president.
He's so calm on stage.
He's a very human being.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. He talks about his flaws. He owns them. He talks about our flaws. He wants us to own them. And I think that that's very optimistic. And he's a fan of the plant, which makes him.
Yeah. And he likes cannabis. That's right.
Yeah, he really does.
Well, well, listen, Michael, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're busy. This has been an amazing experience for me, Michael. I have been waiting. When Jack and I started the show, one of our goals was to eventually someday have you on the show, and maybe we should have asked sooner. I don't know, but I'm glad to have you on a few years later here, and it's super exciting to have you. Where can we find you, Michael? Like, where can our viewers where can they go?
Well, I mean, so perfect-blends.com is my company.
Okay.
We're really committed to telling people what we're up to, what I'm up to. And so you really should check us out. You can follow us on Instagram at Blends by Perfect. And that's my mouthpiece these days. That's where I'm talking.
Awesome.
And I'll have a new edition of my book next year. That'll be out.
Yeah.
But for now, check out Perfect, because Perfect honestly represents the absolutely best understanding of cannabis that I can muster.
Absolutely. It's awesome.
We'll put that in the show notes. Yeah, we'll add that in the show notes, everybody. This has been really amazing. We really, really appreciate your time, Michael.
It was great. You guys really know. I mean, what's great, it's nice to talk to somebody who has an informed approach to this, and you guys clearly do. So thanks so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it.
No, not a problem at all. We want to thank all the listeners out there for coming back on maybe one of the awesomest Cannabis Connoisseur podcast episodes we've had. If you find this episode helpful, just make sure that you please share this with anyone that you can also find it helpful. Like it, subscribe. Share the good word. We'll be on Spotify, iTunes, Jack,
Apple iTunes. Yep, we're going to be on all the major platforms where we get podcasts and YouTube. This will eventually be up on YouTube too, guys. So we appreciate you.
Absolutely. So we want to thank you guys again. Check us out next week. Share, subscribe, and like, and we'll see you on the next one.